Hey, Carl, thanks so much for joining me again. We are really excited to dive back in to talk a bit more about Lex and set up the process for your book. Uh, we've been chatting a lot this week about your progress, and I'd love to hear a bit about the main learnings and how things are going.
Yeah, I mean, Sammy, thanks, and it's been amazing. It's interesting because a year or two ago, I probably more like 3 or 4 years ago, I found myself saying that I didn't enjoy writing anymore. You know, I was trying to actually I was trying to reorient the entire business around audio because I just didn't enjoy writing anymore. And by writing, I sort of mean like touching the keyboard.
Mm.
I still loved idea hunting, which is all I think about. My writing is just noticing things in the world and then commenting on them. And I was like, oh, I could just do this via audio. This has rekindled my joy of writing, because I think what I didn't like about it was this, like sitting in a room by yourself, and the sort of manual, really nature of processing. I wanted to I love processing verbally. This has been a real interesting, I don't know, revelation is not quite the right word, but just sort of reigniting of that energy. Because I did 29 or 30 of these essays last week. I was literally like, I don't know how, like before our first conversation around Lex, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get all 97 of these done. Now I love every idea in the book. I love talking about the ideas, but I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna possibly write it. And so to get 30 of them from what I thought was a really good draft, even from transcript level, to editor at the publishing house saying ready to go in a week is crazy, right? And it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it. And I think it's because there's like, it doesn't feel like I'm not by myself. I'm sitting in a room. I'm not in a room by myself. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that's really, really great to hear. And that's what we're really going for with Lex. We're having a pretty great editor that's read all of your stuff jumping in to support your process. It's just to reignite your excitement and give you iterations that you can shoot down or partially accept. And yeah, we really love it. So excited you do too.
Yeah. No, it's been great. It's been great. And yeah, there's a lot of specific things that I've learned this week that we can talk about, but that overall, it's been like, wow, what a joy. Again, it's the best writer's room I'm involved in, and I'm involved in a number of them, but it's the best writer's room I'm in right now, and it's in my own house, right? And by the way, nobody else in this writer's room has feelings. And by feelings, I just mean like fancy feelings. I have lots of fancy feelings. Nobody else, like Lex doesn't have fancy feelings. And Lex also for some reason, is super flexible about the timing of getting work done. Like if I decide I want to do something on Saturday morning, it's odd. Lex is like, let's go. And so that's been really good too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of what people call writer's block is you need a fresh set of eyes and you've been looking at it too long. So to have someone always there to just be like, what exactly is going on here? Yeah, no.
Yeah, and it's relieved my wife of a job that she didn't really ever want, which this week she was like, I can't believe how, I was like, I got 30 essays done. She's like, you haven't asked me any questions. I mean, I used to just annoy the crap out of her because I'd every 5 minutes be like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And suddenly that's not happening anymore, which is, she's more than happy to pay $12 a month for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, if you had any examples of a process that you really, really liked, I'd love to dive in.
Yeah, I'm thinking, it might be fun just to talk first of all about the specific piece that I was working on, which I think was really interesting to me. I wrote it like 10 years ago, the first draft. So I'll just share my screen now. And you'll see why I was actually it was odd. I was a little nervous to ask this question because I was like, I totally get the irony of working with Lex about an essay about how humans don't fit into algorithms. And I want to just like right up front for anybody who watches this, like I know, like again, I always love Malcolm Gladwell's quote about he would rather be accused of overreaching than being too timid. The sketch itself, I've thought hard about because I'm like, that is definitely not true. This is not what advice from an algorithm looks like anymore. But when I wrote this 10 years ago, it was pretty close to that's what it looked like. So this was interesting because I started with Lex. I said, hey, I wrote this 10 years ago. I don't even know if it's true anymore. Like, what do you think? And Lex came back and said, no, I think this is actually more important now than it was 10 years ago to get this sort of nuance right. And so we worked through a bunch of ideas on like how, because the nuance was off from, as you can imagine, from, and maybe it wasn't 10, maybe it was 7 years ago, whatever. It doesn't really matter. If it was more than 3 years ago, you know, things have changed dramatically. So there was a bunch of nuance that I really needed to work through. And so, you know, we worked really hard through this complex adaptive system. Like if, you know, this is some of my favorite work in the world where you can take something that I've probably read 20 books about complex adaptive systems. If I can get something useful down in a couple sentences, and again, totally get it. I've left a lot of nuance out. You could even argue that, you know, it's wrong because there's some nuance left out, but this is really helpful to people who don't spend all day thinking about complexity theory. And then this was really interesting to me. This was the part that I thought, like, this was literally, I don't even know how to overemphasize how excited I was about this work. And this was me working through it with a great editor called Lex, right? Algorithms can analyze patterns brilliantly, but I believe this is true, right? And Lex believed it was true. And actually, I took this essay and put it in just straight up chat because I was curious. And I was like, hey, do you think this is true? And it highlighted this paragraph. Algorithms can analyze patterns brilliantly, but they can't feel the anxiety of a major investment decision or the pride of achieving a financial goal. And I love this last line, or the responsibility of providing for a family. So this was really, really helpful. This was probably, you know, a good, but again, this could have been, I probably would have tossed this out without the help of an editor called Lex. So that was helpful. And then the last thing I want to highlight on this is it's not done because this word is not right. You know, your most powerful tool isn't a calculator. And now it's your humanity. Now it could be an algorithm. It could be a calculator. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be math. But I'm not feeling like that word is exactly right. The reason I've still settled on it is because I was like, it's just a placeholder for, it feels like putting algorithm in there feels a little too, I don't know. It feels repetitive and it feels slightly lazy. So then I was like, calculator feels kind of like a throwback, you know, like everybody uses a you know what a calculator is. Like it felt a little, I don't want to use the word everyman. It felt it just felt a little normal to just put calculator there. So it might be right. But I asked Lex, I said, hey, can you give me give me 3 suggestions. In fact, here, let's do this. Is this helpful?
Yeah.
So what I would do here is I would just, you know, I would probably just say, I would voice this and I would just say something like, and I use the mic all the time in this message. I would just say this, you know, I don't know if I can do voice. Let me see. Yeah. I'm not sure that calculator is the right word in the last sentence. ... I like it. Period. It seems to work. Period. But give me 3 other words that might work. Yes, interesting, right? Like
yeah, I think spreadsheet's interesting. I don't know if it's the right one, but
Yeah, and those are words like I even mentioned just 10 seconds ago. Like it could be spreadsheet, it could be algorithm. I never thought of equation.
Yeah.
I'm actually tempted to go even further down the calculator path and use math, right? Like, so yeah,
Mm,
it'd be interesting. Let me see. What do you think of going even further and using the word math in place of calculator? Yeah, it's interesting because that's what I was just talking about, broader and more conceptual.
yeah.
I'm always thinking about like, how can I avoid distractions, from the point? And, like if somebody's going to think, oh, is calculator, like if that's going to cause the face,
Mm,
then and I don't know if math would change that, but I'm actually tempted to go with math. So I would just be like, okay, great. But that's an example of, I would have run upstairs and said, hey, Corey, what do you think? Should I use calculator or math or spreadsheet? And I could continue this, like, tell me more about math, make a case for math. I've done that. Like, hey, make a case
mm,
for math. And then I'll say, hey, I don't love math. I'll trick it and say, like, I don't actually like math. Will you please argue against math?
yeah.
And I'll see, you basically straw man the thing, and I'll see both sides of that argument, and it will give me, so I do that a lot. Like, I love the sentence, tell me why you love it. And then I'll go, you know what? After thinking about it, this sentence is not working. Tell me why you don't think it works. And reading both of those will help me fine tune what I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the like big key to, and people will call this like prompt engineering or prompt design. I think it makes it sound more complicated than it is. But the big key to working with AI tends to be realizing that you can kind of talk to it like you would a person, like a human
Yep.
editor, and like
Mhm.
what are the thought exercises that you would do with that human editor to get a good result. So yeah, like having it argue against it. I guess the main key though is that it works so much faster. So you could do these exercises that you'd never burden a real assistant with, because that'd be crazy.
Totally,
Um,
totally.
but yeah,
And
you can.
that's
Oh,
one
go
thing I
ahead.
really want to emphasize is like natural language computing, right? So I literally will hit the mic button on my keyboard, talk, not fix anything,
Mm,
and then hit enter. And so the pace at which you can move, because I don't have to figure out exactly the right words, if I can just think like, okay, great. Because what I used to do is I'd call Jason to get all the reasons Jason agreed with me. And then I'd call Dallas to get all the reasons, because Dallas is much meaner and more aggressive. I called Dallas, and Dallas would give me all the reasons this was bad. And then I'd compare Jason to Dallas. Now I can do that without Jason and Dallas.
yeah, and also similar to what you're mentioning about like just talking to it and having the audio transcription. Another really great thing that LLMs can do is for like supplemental research. We're actually adding this feature really soon. Like I'll sometimes just copy and paste a transcript from YouTube. If there's someone I really respect who's talked about a topic that I want to like
Mhm.
use those learnings from a YouTube video, you can just snag the transcript from YouTube, throw it in Lex, and be like, hey, could you use this as context for whatever process I'm doing?
Yeah.
We're making it so that if you put a URL to a YouTube video, it just snags the context.
Oh,
So
that's
that's even
amazing.
easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, like these kind of fragmented things that would be so annoying to give a human. You could just give AI the grunt work, and then all the humans could do more interesting, fun work.
Yeah, yeah. And let me just mention real quickly on the humans doing more fun, interesting work. I am, this week we're recording this, after the kind of deep seek announcement, and then all the stuff going on about lots of people being replaced in
Mm,
places like Washington and wherever else, without getting political in any way. And then there's been some interesting podcasts from people I respect about this, Chris Sacca and Tim Ferriss. And whenever I get really tied up in knots about the future, like my kids or my future, or it it's always interesting to me. I've been having this experience ever since robo-advisors showed up. I was a financial advisor when robo-advisors showed up, right? I'm convinced the answer is to be more human, right? And that even in the midst of all these announcements lately, you'll see people say like, I want a place to gather. I want to go to coffee with a friend. I want to sit around a fire in the evening, like human connection. And this feels to me like this, what's happening for me with Lex is like, now I'm like, I've got 15 books outlined in my folder that they've been around forever. And I'm now like, I could actually do them. And the reason I care, it's this last 10 or 20%, the stuff we just did, right? Like thinking about the word calculator versus math, and that paragraph above that, AI can't feel the responsibility of providing for family. Chat was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly right. Right. While giving a nod to algorithms can analyze patterns brilliantly. Well, that took humanness, right? That took work. And I feel like the difference between, I've always felt this way about design. Like when you hold an iPhone in your hand, or in the early days, when you held an iPhone in your hand, you didn't know what to call it, but you just knew there was something different about it. And I think that's the same with writing, of like the craft is becoming more, it's not being replaced. It's actually becoming more important because there's so few people willing to actually do the last 10% the craft. So I love that piece of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's really, really vital to what's happening to writing and what we're trying to make Lex as a product into, because really great writing requires so much iteration and decision making, and there's a lot of energy put into like coming up with 5 different options, and then you pick the best one, and like the picking the best one, and the like mental energy to do that is such a big lift and important, and just coming up with them is just kind of more grunt work. And AI lets you kind of isolate the two types. My favorite metaphor for it is it's important to learn arithmetic. It's important to learn like the basic math that goes into like division and multiplication when you're learning math. But then once you have that down, you use a graphing calculator and you focus on the big problems. And that's kind of how I view Lex. Like it's the graphing calculator of writing. You don't focus as much on the little problems, and they're important to know how to deal with the little problems when you're learning. But yeah, it just lets you focus on the big questions and really refine great writing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? The other thing that was really helpful for me this week was the editorial guide and the experience I had with the editorial guide. So just for the sake of people who are listening, I found it really useful, and it was pretty simple. And I'll just leave this up on the screen so I can show you. But it was all I did was I went into an AI tool, and it was chat for me at the beginning, and I just had to analyze a bunch of my work. And I said, like, I used vibes. I was like, what are the vibes? Like, help me explain the vibes of this writing. And then I actually gave it some other writing, like David White or Young Pueblo, and I said, like, compare it to this. Like, not like I want to be more like that, but just compare it. And again, it was useful to hear the descriptions against each other. And then I used words that I had the luxury of having sort of the history of. Like, I know what people say about my writing. Like, I like, it's conversational. It's clean and simple. So I would tell it, like, people have said about my writing that it's conversational, rhythmic, almost poetry, like that level of like, you've thought really carefully about cadence. So I got all that in one big document. And then I asked Chad, actually, I said, hey, I want to create a style guide. We talked about this a little bit in the last conversation, so you can go back and listen to that if that's helpful. But what happened this week was I ran it, and this is really important. My first couple of rounds with using AI, I was just like, nah, it sucks. Never mind. And somebody on my team who's really into it was like, no, that's not how it works, right? Like, how long did it train you to get a great editor? Or how long did it took a decade. like, can you take a couple weeks? So that's what happened again this week is, and I wish I could find the exact example among these 30. But there was one example, and I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was in here where, yeah, there was one example, and it could have been this one, where I said my normal prompt, which is, so I go in and I say, use the, at the very beginning, I say, using the editorial style guide, please help me craft this essay. And then I attach the editorial style guide, the thing that chat helped me write. And then if I remember right, one of these, and it could have been this one, was like almost like a complete rewrite. And it was even some language that I was like, I've never used that language. And I was starting to get a little frustrated because it did it like twice in a row. And it doesn't look like it was this one. But I said to it, hey, I'm getting a little frustrated because you seem to be rewriting these things. Like, that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for an edit of an existing draft. And if it was an existing draft, I would say, I'm asking you to help me clarify this transcription. I'm not asking you to rewrite it. And it said, oh yeah, you're right. I'm so sorry. That's what the style guide says. I'm sorry. Let me try again. And we got back on track. And at the end of that, and I wish I could find it, because at the end of that, I was like, wait, this has happened a couple times. Why don't I ask it how to fix this? So here's Carl's writing style and editorial guide. So this was created basically in ChatGPT. You can see some of the things we talked about. Conversational tone. It even gave, I even asked it to provide examples. Direct and assertive. Balance, confidence, and connection. Oh, this is it. This number 3. So these are the two things that happened. Here it is. Editor's role. So I said to Lex, I said, okay, this has happened twice now. What instructions could I give you to make sure it doesn't happen again? Because we got back on track. I was like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to protect my voice. See, look at this. It actually wrote this. The goal is to protect and enhance Carl's voice, not reinvent it. So I said, what instructions should I give you? And it wrote the instructions. And this is what it wrote. The goal is to protect and enhance Carl's voice, not reinvent it. When editing published pieces, and this could say when editing transcripts, I just don't want anybody to have an excuse that, like, I don't have published writing. When editing transcripts, assume they're already, like, you could have, assume the key idea is already there. Make small, purposeful, don't rebuild what isn't broken. Oops. Before suggesting changes, ask, am I improving this piece? Is this edit necessary? And then it actually provided exact examples of what we had just worked through. And I said, okay, tell me what instructions I should give you to prevent this, and tell me where to put it in the style guide. It told me it should go down here after minimalism. It should go down here under editor's role and above additional notes. Okay, so that's one thing. Any questions about that? Because I want to show you one other thing it fixed in the style guide.
No, I mean, I think just generally, it's this is just a very, very good example of a lot of the things that feel like there are technical barriers to getting into AI. Like, how would I, like, if someone's looking at this, they'd be like, oh my gosh, how would I know to design a prompt or design a style guide that AI could read that's helpful for my work? And the answer often is AI is kind of an expert at everything if you ask it the right questions.
Yeah, especially that. Like, yeah, that dawned on me as like the most, like, wait, who should I ask about how to give AI? I got to call somebody. I got to find somebody to tell me how to give AI instructions. Well, who better to ask than AI?
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, it already has your editorial style guide. It's already making mistakes that you've corrected, and it's figured out how to move forward with it. So just to say, hey, you made this mistake, can you show me how to not make this mistake in the future? Like, I'm going to use this style guide again, and then it'll do it. And the only issue is you got to just paste it. Like, just do what it says.
Yeah,
So yeah.
Yeah, and that was even another level because it wrote it, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? I could just." I was like, "Where should I put this?" And then I just asked it, like, "Where do you want it in the style guide so you'll never make this mistake again?"
Yeah, yeah, and I guess something else to just throw out there is we're very big into like this prompt that you created here. This was made through ChatGPT because essentially you had a really great chat in ChatGPT and said, "How do I replicate this elsewhere?" This translatable kind of nature of prompting exists during things into Lex and out of Lex. Like you could have had a chat in Lex that you really liked. It gives you all of that background info, and you can bring that back to ChatGPT. You can also in Lex share this prompt with anyone in the world. Like if you're collaborating with an editor, you can. It's like one button, and you could have it show up in their Lex environment, or they click a link and it's in their Lex environment. So to come up with really, really smart, growing, alive prompts like this one, where you change the document, it changes the prompt, and then you send it around, is something we're super excited about.
Yeah, I was beyond. You know what? Like one of the things I've kept in mind as I'm working is I remember this interview with Sam Altman where he was asked, "How are you going to make money with OpenAI?" Essentially, how are you going to make money? He said, "The coolest part about this entire project is we're just going to ask AI." Which I was like, like, and you can argue all day about whether that's true or not, but but the point is the same thing here. Like, so here's the last example of that. 3, this one didn't exist. It kept making, like, it kept getting rid of. So my work is very conversational, but it's also like sparse, and I feel like I want to get rid of any word that doesn't need to be there. So those are conflicting instructions, like be conversational and cut any word that doesn't need to be there. And it kept cutting words like, I've noticed, or our sense of, or some words that, here it gave an example. Maybe the market will recover, shows uncertainty. Our sense of the market has changed, shows shared experience while maintaining confidence. So I was like, I said, "Hey, you keep removing words that I think are, good for conversational tone. But I also don't like qualifiers. Like I'd never liked like qualifiers." And it said, I said, "How do we fix this?" It said, "Good point. We need to distinguish between hedging qualifiers." And I would have known to call it this: hedging qualifiers and conversational phrases. And I said, "Oh, you know what? Should we add that to the style guide?" It's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Where?" And it told me to put it as number 3. So it wasn't even like added as number, what would have been number 7, added at the bottom. It said, insert it in between direct and assertive and short and punchy, and call it balancing confidence and connection. And here's what I want you to tell me. Avoid unnecessary qualifiers like maybe, perhaps, possibly, which is exactly what I don't like. But occasionally keep these phrases that build connection and show shared experience while maintaining confidence. This is gold for me. Like the ability, like that's exactly what makes Carl's writing Carl. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're touching on. So one of my favorite quotes about writing, I think Bill Hader said it, which is when you give someone a piece of your writing and they give you a suggestion of something to change, the suggestion is often wrong, but the feeling of wrongness is almost always right.
Yeah.
I think AI does such a good job of, you notice something and you're like, "Hey, this feels wrong. How do we fix it?" And then AI is just such a good sounding board of like, "Oh, maybe this is wrong. Maybe this is wrong. Maybe this is wrong." And then it helps you come up with the actual solution that you then can use.
Yeah, totally. And I think it might be helpful just to mention, like, gosh, this is a lot of work. Like that was like 7 extra minutes. And even if it was an extra hour, because I'm sure I've invested, at this point, I've probably invested 100 hours in this entire process, going back months and months and months and months, to at the point where I finally thought, wait, this is an investment, not an expense, this time.
Mhm.
And so it's important to remember now, like I got 30 essays done last week. I would have never, and now I'm just getting more and more confident. And not to mention, who cares if I got more writing done? I enjoyed it, right? Like I'm going to actually write this book. I haven't published a book since 2014. My second book came out in 14, mainly because I was just like, man, that process is so hard. And part of the hardness is the beauty of finding the right word. Like, is it calculator, math, or algorithm, or spreadsheet? That hardness I don't want to go away.
Mm.
That's the human heart. Like that's when you're done with that, you're like, I nailed it. That feels so good. That paragraph about algorithms are great at analyzing patterns, but they can't feel the responsibility of providing for a family. Like that to me is what, like, I live for that. But what I don't live for is like, oh, back and forth, and I got to call 12 people, and I got to order, and how do I come up with different? So I'm seeing all of this work now pay off as a giant investment that compounds.
Mm.
And I went I went a year or so just saying, waste of time, waste of time, waste of time, waste of time. And so it's just interesting to see the compounding effect of, it's like allowing me to be me at scale.
Yeah. No, it's so amazing to hear. It's so fun to see your process as it grows.
Yeah, I don't know what else would be. I mean, we've covered a lot. Is there anything else that you think would be really helpful this time?
Yeah, I think how much time do you have? We could go over. I think refining the efficiency of what you're doing could be something, but it might take
That'd
a
be helpful.
second.
Let's just go through it real quick. So, here's the part that I'm most interested in. Let's see if I share my screen again. So when I go in to write a new draft, let's say like this one, this untitled one is one that I think I've worked a little bit on it. Yeah, I have worked a little bit on it.
Cool.
But now that there are, how many ever that are kind of done that are going to make it into the book. I mean, they've still got a layer of editing that's incredibly valuable from an amazing editor that I have at the publishing house. But they're like, for me, they're really, really, really close. So I've got all these now. What I've been doing manually, and you can just tell me if there's a better way, is I start these conversations almost the same every time. I'm going to scroll up here. Using the editor, I just say, and I say this manually every time, using the editorial guide and the other essays as guidance help me refine this essay. I think it's pretty close. Tell me what you think. And then I manually attach, and by manually, I simply mean, I can click now and I can just go to Lex Documents and hit this folder, and it adds all of them.
Yeah. So I think to me, the like lowest hanging fruit is if you hit the button create prompt.
Yep. See, this is why I wanted to ask you, because this comes up every time, and every time I just hit dismiss.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I hit create prompt.
So what's nice here is it's going to just like essentially analyze the chat and then build like a one button, like you see that in yellow, like a one button thing that will create a similar process. And then what I would do, actually, I'd go back first to the previous chat and just copy your first message that you used. Just because you like that, and we might want to just use it.
So copy this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you go click plus at the top,
this one
left of access, yeah. And then the dots to the left of the new prompt.
The dots to the left of the new.
Like
this one, refine spending. This one,
just the dots next to it.
Yeah.
And then edit prompt. Let's just read this and see if we like it. And if we don't like it, you could just paste in the system prompt instead.
But what it did was it wrote something very specific about spending and aligning it with personal values.
Yeah, then we can just kill it. I mean, maybe there's something of value in there. But the easiest thing is you can basically put that first message that you're already using and just paste it right there.
So how do I get rid of this one probably, right?
Oh, no. It's a nice scaffolding to then tweak.
Oh, so tweak it. So I'm going to go back
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
it. Yeah.
Like theoretically, you could delete the system prompt and just paste in what you copied from the previous one. And then just scroll down to just make sure that there's nothing odd in the first message. And then it says, look at my latest chef. Perfect. Yeah, yeah. So if you click update prompt there.
Should I name it something?
It's yeah. You should probably rename it. That name doesn't make sense.
Jeez. Help me with this draft. Help me. Okay, and then I just go to back.
Yeah, I might even say help me polish this draft, and then in parentheses or something like that, say like using samples, because that's essentially what the custom prompt in here is.
And guide or just samples?
Well, what does the prompt say? The system prompt using the editor. Yeah. So you'd want to say samples and guide. It's not going to impact the prompt. It's just good for you to have the reminder. Like the title, the name doesn't impact the system prompt. So yeah, then I would just scroll down and save it. And basically what this is doing, and you could have just made the prompt from scratch. The creator prompt just sometimes makes it faster.
Yeah.
If you exit out of prompt builder, now instead of typing in the beginning, which just like, I don't know, you type maybe 3 sentences, you can just attach down there the custom prompts, and then hit that button, and then that's it. You don't have to type.
I do it here, or do I just hit this right here?
First you attach the samples, and then we're actually making it so that custom prompts can have preloaded context tags. So then it would literally just be one button. But right now you still have to attach the samples. Then you hit that button. Essentially, instead of typing, you just hit that button.
So, but I'll add all these samples.
Mm-hmm.
And then I need to add, so I have the editorial guide as a context tag, but it's also a document. Is there one that's better than the other?
So the benefit of the context tag is the context tag we made has a little sentence kind of describing the purpose of that document, just to orient the LLM. Both would work. Both definitely would work. And theoretically, if it's easier, like if you're always using the editorial guide with the samples, we could right now add the samples to the context tag with your editorial guide. So it's just one click. And it'll be.
I keep adding new, every time an essay is done, I put it in so the sample is growing.
Yeah, the context tag would grow too. If the folder is in the context tag, it'll grab the most recent version of the folder.
What's best? You tell me what's best. Because what obviously is the best is when this prompt
has everything.
Will already have it all. But we're talking about, again, this is important because it's a refinement of a process, but it is a small tweak.
Yeah. So basically, I think it is better to make the context tag have everything. The only downside is if you think you'll sometimes be using the editorial guide without the samples. And in that case, I would just attach the document instead of the tag. So
there will be times when I do that.
Yeah, and I think you'll probably just attach the document and then it's fine. So if the most common use case is a context tag that has everything, I would, and we could do it right now together, I would just go into the context tag for the editorial guide and just throw the folder of your samples in there too right now.
You know what else though is interesting? I noticed that if I had like a copy of the editorial guide in a folder, and when I went to update it, you had to remake that copy. Like when those changes we made earlier to the editorial guide.
Yeah.
When I added number 3 and I added if I'm back out here at home, the editorial guide lives here.
Mm-hmm.
I can make a copy, like duplicate it, and then put it in this folder.
Right.
When I updated the main one, it doesn't update the copy.
Oh yeah, the copy is like a different version. They're not
Yeah.
connected.
So I was like getting confused about, so if I attached the wrong editorial guide, was it the copy or is it one that has the new updated number 3 and that other instructions? So finally I said, you know what, I'm only gonna have one editorial guide. It's going to live at home, and I'll just remember to attach it each time.
I think that's the best practice. Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay. Cool. Well, then so that just means I go in now and I say, in final drafts, new document, ask Lex, and I do this. That gets me all the drafts. Then I add either the context tag, or I could just add the editorial guide as a document.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hit this button.
Yeah.
Except I got to I'll put a new essay in
there. And that's the exact process you've been doing, except you just don't have to type. It's just a click.
Okay. And then, but over time, maybe that prompt will allow me to put the documents in there, and I'll just be one button. I don't have to attach anything.
Exactly. And right now we can go into your context tag and throw in all the samples if you wanted. We can show you how to do that.
Yeah, why don't you show me how to do that? I don't know that it's, so what do I do? Close this?
So you go to Prompt Builder, which is just third from the bottom on this. Yeah. And then open up the editorial guide. And then you hit the add button under attachments. And yeah, just click that. And that's it.
Oh, so that whole folder lives there.
Yeah, and every time you add something new to it or take it out, it'll the moment you attach it, it grabs the most recent version of that folder.
So I think if I do this as like knowing your money, the name of the book, your money, or editorial guide, and then I'll say use, because this may or may not be, I mean, it's always nice to have a sample of my writing around. Editorial guide, your use with your money book. That just helps me remember that all that stuff's in there.
Yeah.
So now I saved that. So now if I close this, go back out just for the sake of untitled, go back out one more time. Delete that guy. I go to new document, ask Lex. I can go to add context tag, boom. And then all I have to do is hit this.
Yeah, and that's the whole process.
Okay, and it's going to say, great, there's nothing there.
Yeah, the one thing I actually want to take a quick second look at is if you go back to Prompt Builder for the context tag, I just want to make sure the instructions we put in there last time still work if there's samples in there. So it's just please use style guide to evaluate the writing. Okay. I would say you might want to say please use style guide and samples to evaluate the writing. Is probably the only change. And then theoretically, if you're going to be asking questions about like the book as a whole and asking like, how does this essay I'm working with fit in the full book? There might be, I think it'll work really well as is, but there's a chance it'll get a little confused, and you might want to say like, use the style guide and samples to evaluate the writing, see the samples as a full book of essay. Like that might be extra detail that could be helpful for the LLM. I think it's probably not vital.
Okay. That's amazing. Yeah, I think like every bit of this refinement is just making the work better and my job more fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah. Amazing, Sammy. That's super good.
Cool. Well, yeah, this was so fun. Looking forward to continue the conversation.
Yep. Cheers.